Mark II power armour, Crusade Armour. Slaves. We had always been slaves. We did not even have a word for freedom, for rebellion, or even for peace. All we knew was the domination of our people. The overlords, the Ziprazi, controlled everything. Every moment of every day was prescribed, manipulated, mastered. We lived in cages of our own construction. The lies they heaped on us made up the bars, drove us under, broke our spirits before ever they were formed. And some thought that they were even happy. But how can a man or woman be happy if it does not know, does not have freedom? With all of those decisions, discussions, and the responsibility that goes with it. How? Yet most wandered through their days like ghosts, with fixed smiles and sloped shoulders. I remember the day it all changed for me. I was less than a score of seasons old. My production hub had broken down, so some of us were sent below, into the Undercity, the Old City, to find if there was a rupture, a shift, is what we were told. We knew nothing of this, so ignorant were we, so uneducated. We roamed deep, looking for rock slides and falls, as described by the overlords. And it is then that I found it. A sacred place. Something I should never have seen. For down there, near the depths, behind a new slide of mud and grime and rocks, there it was. A segment of city that looked like no other, because it had not been built by the prescription of the overlords. We had done it alone. I could tell this immediately, instinctively. As you do not have to be told that the sun touches your face, despite your eyes being closed. I knew. And in the knowing, I was damned. Because I could see that we had done something on our own. We humans had made this place, made this city. There was a time when we were not slaves, not dominated, and we were not inept, not incompetent. We did not need the protection of the overlords. Perhaps we never did. And a mess. Even though ages had passed, I could still see where this place had been, could see it had been smashed. Half-melted buildings, broken pavements fused into glass. They had done this. The overlords had done this to us, our ancestors. And from that day onwards, I had changed. And I spread the word. Slowly at first. I had to be cautious, careful. For none like to be told that they could be more than they presently are. In the end, I even had to kill a man. He seemed so open, so hated the overlords, as did we all. Yet when I told him of my finding, what I had witnessed and kept to myself, he rejected the information. He rebelled against its implications so much, looked inwards and found that he could not contain the hatred. So he turned it on me. He called me a liar, began to shout that he would reveal me. So I did the only thing I could. I hated it, but I did it. And I was ever more cautious from there. Yet over a decade of slow meeting, building our strength, we began. Small things at first, little errors that reduced production, little errors that brought the wrong thing to the wrong person. And as we grew, as we spoke to each other, we worked out the overlords vied with each other. So we revealed them to one another bit by bit. And so we let slip small errors again, showing the overlords what their kin were doing, what they were planning. And soon there was open combat between their thralls. Many hated us for it, as we were sent in waves at each other. The overlords using their herds of humans to do battle. They never used their guards, their enforcers, never. So any who knew of the cause, but were not part of it, they despised us. And eventually, one of them turned and told the overlords. And the clampdowns began. The culls were sent into full swing. We hid as best we could, but they knew where we were. How could they not? They had recorders everywhere. And they wiped out most of us, we rebels, largely due to the amount of humans they slaughtered. But we held the line, for we knew they needed us more than we needed them, to be their thralls, to mind their oars, to maintain their place in reality. But after that, I grew more despondent. Even I lost my fire. For even if our people had once been great, had done things without assistance, had ruled ourselves, what did it matter if we could never return to this? What did it matter what the past held when the future was so bleak? And deep down, I started to do something nobody else did. I started to talk to myself. I began to go aside and whisper to what I called the spirit of mankind, and I uttered my hate of the enemy. I begged for a saviour, for our people out there in the darkness of space to hear my call, to hear our lament, to hear of our pain. And then, one day, the impossible. Stars shone in the night sky, stars that had not been there before. And as I looked on, fire came down on our hub. But it was not a rain of fire. It was drops of metal with corona around them. And when they hit, they did so in mostly empty regions, but near to the homes of the overlords. I could not believe it. I rushed to a building now cleared, but near to the overlords. And I saw it. I saw them. From these teardrops, metallic monsters came out, each as tall as an overlord, each with glowing green eyes, their metal skins as red as blood. They erupted out and moved so fast. They ran towards the homes of the overlords. They scaled the stairs. They marched inside. And they brought fire and wrath down on the overlords. I viewed as a hoverpad brought enforcers down. Their weapons fired explosions that tore the overlords' enforcers to pieces. When they got in close, they would just beat the enforcers to the ground and execute them. The weapons of the overlords' enforcers did nothing. They bounced off them, made their armor bright in patches for mere fleeting seconds. But not one metal monster fell. Not one. And I shuddered in fear as I watched. I wept. Had we replaced one evil with a greater tyranny? Who were these metal things who slew so easily? But it was then that it happened. A thing came down from the skies. It was bathed in light. It was huge. It had wings coming out of its back. It too wore the red armor, but with more gold. And then I saw its face. It was human. And I could not control myself. I crept from my hiding place as it gently came down, and its feet touched the ground. Around it, these huge metal warriors circled, yet the winged thing made them look small, and as I walked out in a daze, they levelled their weapons at me. Yet I did not die. And I could not believe it. The winged being looked directly at me and beckoned me to approach. I was mesmerized. I walked to him. I could not resist. He looked down on me. His human eyes twinkled. His lips broke into the most gentle smile I had ever seen. And he spoke to me. He asked, "Are you Partant 423? He knew my designation. I nodded, dumbfounded. No words would come from my throat. He then gave one sign, and around me, a half-dozen of these metal beings raised their arms and took off their helmets. They were human. Huge, but they were human. I lost all energy. I went down onto my knees as I felt like my bones had disappeared. As the hub around me burned, I could hear the screams of the overlords, their enforcers, but none from humans. They were here just to kill the overlords. Just them. And he spoke again, this huge human with wings. As he looked down and knelt and took my hands in his, he stood slowly and raised me up, so I too stood. He then looked around and stated in that perfect voice, "We come to free our people. We come to bring justice. We come because I heard you. I heard your mind, your message. The overlords will suffer as you have suffered. But you are now free, and everyone on this world with you." And I wept, for I knew it was true. They had come. Our people had come. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the factions, faces, and war gear of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. A reminder that we have other avenues of entertainment, links in the description, and give us a like and a share if you enjoyed the video. To support our ongoing efforts against boredom, do consider joining our Patreon. Now, let us have at it. For today, we are to discuss one of the most important, iconic, and beloved of all marks of power armor, used in ceremony or gifted to the most revered or effective Marines in the chapter. It is rare. To many, it is holy. For it is the mark of power armor that really started it all. Yes, terror had to be taken, pacified, and unified, but it was the bedrock, not the goal. For the Emperor and his legions needed to go out amongst the stars, to bring the imperial truth to all, to bring all of humanity under the one banner, the one rule. To free every last colony, right every last wrong, revenge every last unkindness. The Emperor and his Great Crusade would take on Xenos and enemies that even the chapters might not credit. The chapters of the 41st millennium, do battle with the nightmares of the warp, the denizens of the dark, the Orc, the Eldar, the Tau, the Tyranny, the Hrud. But they did not fight the Great Crusade. They did not quell the galaxy. For the Legiones Astartes, the Space Marines, were the basic battle line troop then. So many were they that the Solar Auxilia, the Imperial Army, was a placeholder, garrison duty, and numbers provider only. It was the legions of astartes that took the fight to the enemy. And the things they fought, the stuff of nightmares. For the battles of those periods were of a grander scale by far. The foes often at the zenith of their power. Alien races aplenty, empires, hegemonies, compacts, leagues, covens, colleges, and monarchies. Entire systems spanning races fought tooth and nail against a crusade, yet it was never stopped, never defeated. Only by turning humanity against its own could any thwart us. And it was the Legiones Astartes that did all of this. From the taking of Luna, where the 16th gained their name, and with the gene rights of Luna absorbed, the Astartes' numbers increased. And then onto the treaty with the tech adepts of Mars. They who would build the ships and tanks and transports and much of the weaponry of the Marines, bringing their titans, their knights, their legions of battle automata. But it was always the legions. They did the dying. They did the real fighting. The Mark I armour of the Unification Wars did not have a sealed suit. It was barely serviceable for Terran worlds, let alone any others. Thus the entire force of the Emperor waited as the new armours were created, and the Mark II was the result. It is called the Crusade Armour for a reason. But, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Mark II Crusade Armour was developed towards the end of the Age of Strife and was used during the dawn of the Imperium by the Space Marines, who carried out the Emperor's Great Crusade to reunite the lost colonies of mankind in a new Imperium of Man. After the conquest of the main planets of the Sol system by the Emperor's new armies of Space Marines, the Mechanicum factories on Mars were set to work constructing a new and far more advanced type of power armor for the Emperor's newborn Space Marine legions. This armored suit is commonly referred to as Crusade Armour, since it was designed with the planned Great Crusade in mind. It was the first fully enclosed suit of Imperial power armour, making it suitable for the conquest of space and operations in a vacuum, and thus is actually considered the first true suit of power armour. It was designed as a fully enclosed suit with life-sustaining systems that now allowed their Astartes to fight in deep space, and on alien worlds with hostile atmospheres or environments. The armour was made up of microscopic circular armoured rings of ceramite, fitted under and over each other, making this armour relatively tedious to repair. The larger armour plates composed of these microscopic rings were linked together to allow for a greater ease of movement, and most of the power cabling for the suit was threaded inside the plating. These articulated sections of ring-shaped armour were present on both the torso and the legs, and provided the Space Marine unparalleled mobility. The backpack retained a similar shape to that of the Mark I suits, but now contained advanced life support equipment such as air scrubbing, fluid recycling, and emergency medical first aid systems, as well as the power supply for the armour. The Mark II was noted to have a more efficient power system to prevent overheating. The helmet also contained electronic sensory devices and miniaturized cogitators or computers that monitored the surrounding battlescape and fed visual and auditory signals directly to the Astartes cerebral cortex through a neural feedback mechanism. This further enhanced the Astartes' already superhuman sight and hearing, while at the same time dampening any blinding flashes or deafening explosions. These so-called autosensors, as well as the other internal improvements, all became standard equipment in every subsequent pattern of Imperial power armour. In the 41st millennium, these suits of power armour are extremely precious relics of the few chapters that still possess a suit or two, and are still used during formal ceremonies and rituals by some chapters. These suits are often given to the chapter's champions as actual battle armour in others. Though quieter than the Mark I, Crusade armour also is not intended for stealth, though the sight of an astartes wearing this armour draws every Space Marine's mind to the glory of the Great Crusade, before the disaster of the Horus Heresy unfolded, and provides a major enhancement to unit morale. Regarded by many as the most effective suit of power armour ever created, the Mark II was notoriously difficult to maintain and dropped out of common use. End quote. And so, we now know about this, the Crusade armour, perhaps the most important mark of warplate ever. And many of the best artificer armours created in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium will never truly compare with this basic armour of the Legiones Astartes. Their warplate became more rugged, perhaps, but mostly it became simpler, easier to create, repair and replace, just to keep pace with the Marines' explosion in numbers across that time. But it is the Mark II power armour that is also at the core of some of the finest warriors in the Imperium, for when they don this armour, they become legend. It is not like the Eldar, who have aspect armour whose souls are kept within the suit. It is more ephemeral, more important. The wearer of a suit of Mark II armour can feel the press of time, the toll of ages. He knows that he wears something that is sacred, even if he be not religious. There is a touch of wonder to any who see, let alone wear, such a suit. For those who know, it reminds of a golden moment when the enemies of humanity shuddered, when the Emperor and his Primarch sons walked the halls of fleets, bestrode the battlefields of distant Xenos worlds, and none could ever defeat them. It was a singular moment, a fleeting few centuries, where everything seemed that it would be all right. Humanity would survive. Yet in these suits of armour, this warplate, within the chest of those who wear them, are the collected reminder of those times, and a promise, a secret last holdout whispered in the heart of all who witnessed them. We humans, we can do it again. We can win. Thank you for your precious time. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.